At first she found herself in the back of an immense press of people, all of them attempting to move forward in the same direction. More and more people appeared beside and behind her, pressing her into the already large group in front of her. This sudden appearance of individual after individual, pushing her and the others already there, had its own momentum, and initially it was not comfortable. She was pressed in, not so much jostled as feeling herself moving with the rest in a slow forward direction. She attempted to take in more of her surroundings, but could only detect what seemed to be tall cliffs to her right, and could not quite see what was on her left past the crowd. The sky did not seem so much a sky as a distant roof, but that was only an impression, possibly given by the uniformity of colour in this place. Everything seemed a kind of warm, light, singular shade, somewhat luminescent, as if filtered through something. For the moment, all she could do was inch forward with the crowd. No one spoke, no one seemed to even acknowledge anyone else around them. She thought that the way they seemed to her must be how she and everyone else seemed to each other, as not so much individuals, but a mass that they were all a part of, without so much one mind as one motion, that being forward, inexorably forward, without any other real purpose. This did not make her afraid or confused as such, because it was slowly dawning on her what had happened. She had been, initially, walking down the street towards her own home, talking on the phone to a friend, when a car had suddenly swerved off the road and right into her. There had been a blinding instant of physical impact, but more than that of fear that crushed her with more physicality than the car. However she had died, it was very quick. Her consciousness had ended before her body landed from the arc through the air the car had propelled her on. And then this place. This place. She wasn't sure of much of anything at the time. The memory of the fatal accident, more impactful than anything else that had occurred to her in her relatively young life, was tangible. She should have been in a spiral of physical and emotional pain and tumultuous confusion. So why did she just feel that the only thing she needed to do was to walk forward? Eventually, as she tried to sort these thoughts in her mind, she found the press relieving, and that space was beginning to occur between herself and others, which gave her more of an opportunity to observe them. What she saw was that everyone, herself included, had been suffused with the same overall basic colour of the entire place they were in, which she had begun to apprehend was enormous. The ground seemed like a smooth stone, and although she could see it was pocked with cracks and protuberances and stains and other effects of long existence, it was not at all difficult to traverse. The cliffs she first noticed were indeed tall, and whatever was above her, sky or roof, immense. She could not quite see, though, if people, herself included, were wearing clothes or not. No one seemed to be naked, but what they were all clad with was hard to discern. The best she could manage to conceive was that everyone wore some kind of one-piece garment that fitted around the necks and wrists so closely and comfortably it seemed as if there was no division at all, and her feet did not feel so much shod as numb, or more accurately indifferent, to the ground she trod on. The space between herself and others widened. People were now no longer pressed against each other. Everyone was now just walking at an unhurried pace. Just that, walking. And as the crowd dispersed, it seemed to her that everyone was no longer walking in the same direction, but each in their own, which was accommodated by the immense distances around them. This place was huge. She could see the territory more clearly now as the crowd around her thinned out. There was more now a feeling of space than she had ever experienced, and briefly she felt a kind of panicked longing to get back into the press she was in. She turned to look behind her, and was amazed. Only moments ago she was being pushed forward and into a huge crowd of people by a growing number behind her, but now she seemed to have walked some distance from what she could see was the main part of the crowd, now a kind of swaying whole made up of distinct but distant individuals, but further back, much further than she thought they should have been. She seemed to have covered quite an amount of ground. How long had she been there? The question occurred as if through a haze, as if she had been drunk and only just slowly realised something important, or that she thought should have been important. The question, where was she, didn't even seem to matter. She was somewhere, she knew, although how tangible she did not know, and she was tangibly there, although again in what kind of state she couldn't tell herself, but at least she knew she wasn't where she once was, so there wasn't much point worrying about it. Or was there? That seemed to strike her through the odd mental haze she had experienced as odd. Wasn't there something important she had to feel concerned about? Her former life, because that must be what she should think of it by now. Her former life. Her life, which was over, although here she was, as such, somewhere, also as such. Shouldn't she be looking for answers to all this? Shouldn't there be answers? Shouldn't those answers be important? Wasn't her life important? Wasn't she important? Wasn't everything as a whole important? She walked on. There seemed to her no impression of passing time or exertion on her part. It wasn't even numbness as such. There was no real sensation of pain or pleasure or anything that one could call a tangible human experience. Those things she was starting to register. This was about as much as any answer to any question she might have had as she was going to receive, were becoming more irrelevant. Just think, her whole life, irrelevant. Up to this moment. What moment? Was this anything anyone could call a moment? By what standards? Surely the only standards she had were the ones pertaining to the life she once had, which she was realising was not only over, but without any overall significance, not even to herself right now. And herself. What was that now? What was she? What had she become? There were memories, her physical body, her home which she shared with friends, her part-time job, her full-time studies, her lover, her other friends, her parents and siblings and other family, her activities, achievements, possessions, views, emotions, experiences. She was sorting through these things in her mind as if individual cards or photographs, each one distinct and identifiable, but each one of them records of something else that she identified but no longer experienced as hers, as she was now. And it was her as she was now, that sense of identity in this sense of nowness, that eluded her. So why did she not feel anxious? Probably, as it dawned on her, because such feelings were among those things she was sorting through. Records, an account of something that was once significant to her when she had it, but now, here, in this place and being, had no relevance, could do nothing for her, and was relegated to a past, to a life that once was, but was now no more. Whatever she was, walking this strange path in this strange place in this strange way, sorting through records in her mind detachedly, as if cataloguing a previous effort that now required to be fully concluded and called done. She was not what she once was, that vital living person she had been, had treasured and hated, felt confident with and confused by, all in equal measure, as a great many other things, like herself, do now and once had done. Even, it seemed, the passing of time. For she found that she was still walking as she mused these disparate and increasingly irrelevant thoughts, being catalogued in what remained of her conscious mind, like files to be put away and forgotten. And when she attended to her immediate moment, she could no longer see any of the other people. They had all, herself included, scattered on their various paths. Her own path she could see more clearly now. It was a defined road, broad, of a slightly lighter tone than the rest of the ground, which stretched out further to very distant horizons. But the one main change she now saw was the darkening on the horizon towards which she was unhurriedly walking. Neither clouds nor dusk, but a darkness that sat solemnly as if waiting to receive her. This, it seemed, was her destination. She kept her attention on this darkness. It exuded no cold or wind, more a sense of exclusion, a sensation of absence that she felt she understood, although deeper in herself, perhaps bypassing her conscious mind, within something that was the core of what she was as a self, as if that understanding was that self and had been all along, ever since that self came into being. But something then distracted her. It was a large rock on the side of the road, upon which sat a figure. Presumably it was another person, but a person who had undergone something of a change. It was emaciated, but without any distinguishing features like a ribcage or hip bones. The torso and limbs seemed all the same thickness and width, and that more like a rope. As well, the head was a simple oval-shaped object upon which the face was a mere lazy caricature, two featureless blobs, a small downward pointing crescent underneath. And it seemed to have no hands or feet, the limbs just ending in what looked like soft bristles. This thing sat there on the rock as she approached it, leaning forward, looking as if it had been put there to remind all who saw it what exhaustion was. It did not move or even seem to breathe, but she could see that it was somehow sentient, although she could not say how she saw that. She finally brought herself up to face it, although it did not seem to register at first. Finally, she spoke for the first time since she was killed. "Hello, are you all right?" It did lift its head to face her, although the face didn't seem to move. "Oh," it replied. "Who are you?" The voice was faint but audible. "Well, she began, then trailed off. "I only just got here, I think. I'm not sure. I'm a bit unsure about time here." "Time," the thing replied, as if being reminded of the word. "Yes," she went on. "I can remember... Well, I remember first being here with everyone else, I think, and then just being on this road or something. It's all a bit of a blur right now. Can you tell me where I am?" It brought its head down again in the position it was in before. Time. Then it jerked its head up again. "Yes, that's right, I was on this road. I was walking towards that." And again the head leaned down. She turned to consider the darkness she was walking towards. Was there something to beware of? "You were on this road, were you? Are you having a rest right now?" "Yes," it replied, softer than before. "That's it, I'm having a rest." "I'm not going there," it went on, unprovoked, lifting itself up to face her. "It's not right. I shouldn't even be here. I was... What's the word? It was an accident. I was still young, still had time enough for more things. I should have more time. It wasn't fair, and I'm not going on to there." This seemed about as emotional as this wraith of a thing could get. "Why, yes, I know how you feel," she replied by way of polite consolation, even though she hardly had any idea how she felt, let alone this thing in front of her. The thought of walking towards the darkness just seemed to her to be a routine, something that was just done because it was the done thing to do. She felt no trepidation about it. Some curiosity, perhaps, although she felt now she could satisfy that more easily by detaching herself from this person and finding out herself. "I probably shouldn't be here either," she continued. "It was an accident with me too. I was young, but you know these things happen." She trailed her voice off a bit then. It was hardly convincing, and she was feeling that it was moot to attempt to convince. "I had more time," the thing replied, whether it had heard her or understood her or not. "So I stopped walking. I decided... I thought I'll stay here. I don't have to go there. I don't have to go anywhere." Well, no, she thought. That at least seemed fair. She herself didn't feel compelled to do anything, not even this walk into darkness. There didn't seem to be any hard and fast rules as such. Just, what word could she use now? Maybe her memories were being catalogued and filed away more quickly than she could access them. But then, if this creature wasn't going to go towards the darkness, where was it going to go? What was it going to do? "I'll stop here for a while," it said, as if in answer to her unasked question. She turned to it. "I'll stay here," it went on. "I don't have to go there. I don't have to do anything." No. She once again found herself wondering how long she had actually been in this strange place, before fully realising that the question was redundant because time was redundant here. That being the case, it really didn't matter how long this being stayed here. It could be centuries or forever. The point was, where there was no time, there was no meaning to any action. Since there was no measure, no taking stock between previous and potential actions, not even a present moment in which to contemplate. All thought freezes into the one constant moment that is no moment, and all thought becomes as redundant as time. But more than that, what was there to do? Here, in death. She contemplated this being's diminishment. It was, she understood, disappearing, starting with the limbs' extremities and working towards the main body, finishing perhaps with the head, perhaps with the stomach. For beings like themselves, once human, there were few other reference points than their own bodies, facsimiles of which were all they seemed to be now. Not perfect facsimiles. These incarnations required no nutrition. She had felt no thirst or hunger or any need to evacuate since being here. She also felt no real physical sensation, at least nothing that could be called cold or hot or tired or exhilarated. She looked at this slowly disappearing being sitting in front of her. It was not physically tired, but it had an exhaustion of the self that made it slowly dissipate into whatever nothingness awaited it. By choosing not to go into the darkness, it had chosen not to choose, which was the right choice, as here there was no choice because there was nothing to choose. And she looked at her own hands and noticed the slight splintering, as if cells were unknitting in her fingertips, and understood. She could stay here with this thing, but she didn't want to. And that want wasn't something that she wanted or not. It was just her want, her immediate understanding, to continue on her walk towards the darkness that she had started on when she first got here, just after her death. The walk towards whatever darkness and nothingness waited for her, whatever it was, just as whatever it was there for every other dead soul that finds itself separated from its carnal body and finds itself here, in this place that is no place, where there is no time, and all there is to just do, which is to do nothing at all, and all amounting to nothing in the end, which in the end is just what she did.